Hello everyone, welcome to StudyIQ. We will continue our discussion on economy. This is the last topic in our module, that is growth and development. So we have covered all the important other concepts, like we have discussed about the UNDP reports, okay, and we have also discussed about the different indices which are published in the Human Development Report, like HDI, ISDI, MPI, GII, GDI, and all those things we have covered. We've also talked about Sustainable Development Goals, Millennium Development Goals, okay, and different other concepts like determinants of economic development, capital formation. All these things have actually covered in this module. So if you haven't seen those lectures, you can go back and you can watch that videos. Okay, you can get that videos in this Telegram channel. You can join the Telegram channel, or you can get in touch with me in this Instagram ID. So today we will be dealing with one of the most important topic. This year there was a question also in 2019 prelims. Direct question was asked from this topic. It's purchasing power parity. Okay, so the topic for today's discussion is purchasing power parity, PPP. Okay, so if you remember when we discussed about HDI, one of the indices, okay, so that I've discussed this GNI index, right? Dimension indices. When we have discussed GNI index, and in that I have told you we are taking GNI as the indicator, gross national income at purchasing power. Okay, so gross national income per capita is what we are considering as the indicator of standard of living, and we are taking it at purchasing power. Okay, at that time I've told you we will be taking up a separate discussion on purchasing power. So what do you actually mean by purchasing power? So here I will also be talking about market exchange rate. Okay, so $1 is let's say 67 rupee, or currently it is 74 rupee. That is the market exchange rate. If you need to get $1 from the market, this is what you need to pay. Or when you talk about purchasing power parity, this is around $1 is like 18 rupee or 19 rupee or 20 rupee, like this. Okay, so there is a difference between these two. And when you calculate GDP also, we have seen different cases where when you're calculating at market exchange rate, then you are at the 7th or 8th position. And when you calculate at the purchasing power parity, India will be at the 3rd position, 3rd largest economy if you calculate at purchasing power parity. Which one is good, which one is more important, and all those things is what we are going to discuss. When we talk about purchasing power parity, this will actually give you the real worth of dollar. When you talk about this market exchange rate, this all depends on demand and supply. And in market, you already know that dollar is a hard currency and everybody prefer to have dollar. So the demand for dollar is so high, and in the market, the demand for dollar is so high, the price of dollar will be always high. So that is the reason why this price of dollar is skyrocketing, and it is now 74 rupee, and it will keep on, rupee will keep on depreciating and dollar will always keep on appreciating. Okay, so but here when it comes to purchasing power parity, that will actually give you the real worth of dollar. So it's like this only, the purchasing power of rupee in India and the purchasing power of dollar in US. It's in simple language, $1 if you are spending that in US, okay, and what all items you can buy in US with $1, same items if you need to buy in India, how much you need to spend. So if you are spending $1 in US, what all items you can buy, the same items if you need to buy, the same items you need to purchase from India, how much you need to spend. It is not the 74 rupee. This is just a market exchange rate of dollar. That is 18 rupee. Okay, that is what actually you mean by purchasing power rate. Okay, or this is also one of the exchange rate. This is one of the exchange rate, market exchange rate and purchasing power parity exchange rate. Okay, so let me write down this definition. So purchasing power of rupee in India and purchasing power of dollar in US. That is a comparison that you're making. $1 what you get from US. I'm only talking about standard items. Okay, see how you measure this is actually, you can either take all the goods which is possible. Okay, but that is impossible, right? Because to take all the goods and calculating this is impossible. Or you can take average, but average will not give you the accurate value. So you will go for sample. Some of the items, some standard items you'll take from US, and the same items you'll consider in India. When you take the standard items, means the branded companies items like Pepsi, Coke, or McD Burger, or iPhone, or Samsung phone. These are the items that you can take. Other cool drinks are also there, like there are many other Indian brand cool drinks are also available, but we don't take that. that. We cannot make comparison with that. Okay, so we'll take samples. We can't take all the goods and to make this comparison, all the goods in US and all the goods in India. We can't do that. We can't go for average. Average, we have discussed many times in economy, the mistake that you're going to make when you take average. Average will not give you the correct value. Okay, it will never be correct. So we are going for sample. Okay, so I'll tell you how you're going to calculate this purchasing power parity. I'll show that calculation. In fact, this module is all about, rather than discussing the concept, we have done all the possible calculations, how HDI is calculated, how ISDI is calculated. I've discussed all those methods, even though it is not that significant when it comes to, civil service examination, but just for the interest purpose, I'm discussing this calculation. And here, once you know the calculation, I hope you will never forget this concept also. Okay, so let me write briefly about this definition, and after that let's look into the way in which you calculate this. I'll also tell you how you get this market exchange rate also. So both I'll show you, and then I hope things will be very clear to all of you. So it is an exchange rate system. It is an exchange rate system under which exchange rates of various currencies are determined on the basis of their relative purchasing powers in the respective countries. Okay, so if you are comparing with dollar, we'll talk about US and India. If you want to compare with other currency, we'll talk about that particular country and Indian currency. Okay, so here, what do you mean by purchasing power? In simple language, $1 I'm spending in US, what all items I can get? Okay, let's suppose I'm buying one can of Pepsi with $1. If you need to buy that from India, I may have to spend around 20 rupee. Okay, so one can of Pepsi, I need to spend 300 ml Pepsi, I need to spend around, let's say 20 rupees. So this is what actually you mean by purchasing power parity. But just by taking one item, you can't actually calculate this purchasing power. So you have to take some basket of commodities. I've already told you, you cannot take all the goods. Impossible. You cannot go for average because you won't get the accurate value. So we'll take the samples. Samples means the most common items which are seen in both countries, like Pepsi, Coke, McD burger, iPhone, Samsung phone. All these things is what you can actually take. So let me show you the calculation. I'll take the basket of commodities with which we will calculate how this 18 rupee is actually coming. Okay, and this is what actually is used by IMF and World Bank for GDP comparisons. IMF, World Bank poverty line, if you remember, we have discussed international poverty line also. It is calculated on the basis of this purchasing power parity. Okay, so let's try to understand. Let's take some basket of commodities. Simple case is what we are going to take. Hardly 4 or 5 is enough, just to show you how this is calculated. So let's say in US and in India. So we'll see the rates. Okay, in India as well as in US. In India, we will see in terms of rupee. In US, in terms of dollar is what we are going to see. We'll take the standard items. So Pepsi, let's say 200 ml. The same, that small can is what I'm talking about. So let's say this is $1 in US, and in India it is rupee 30. Let's suppose this is rupee 30. Okay, and then McD burger. So if it is $2 in US, what is the cost of this? It will be like around 70 rupee. So this is 70 rupee. And then if you take mobile phone, I'll take Samsung phone or iPhone, whatever it is. We are taking some sample values, not exactly correct. Okay, Samsung phone. So let's say $1,000. We'll talk S10 or S9. So $1,000. So in India it will be around 60,000. So you can see here, if you calculate on the basis of the first one, Pepsi alone, you will be getting $1 equal to 30 rupee. But that is not actually correct. Similarly, if you calculate on the basis of this, $1 will be 35 rupee, right? Similarly, if you calculate on this basis, $1 will be around 60 rupee. So we can't do that. So what we'll do is we'll take many commodities. So like this, we will take so many commodities, and then we will take some we will take the average of, or we will take the total sums, okay, in terms of dollar and in terms of rupee. So let's say you are spending $1 lakh, okay, and we are getting here rupee 18 lakh. So what does this mean? $1 is equal to rupee 18. So this is what you mean by purchasing power parity. So this is as per purchasing power parity exchange rate. Okay, so as per purchasing power parity exchange rate, $1 is 18 rupee. If we calculate it on the basis of market exchange rate, this is 74 rupee currently. That all depends on demand and supply. The difference between market exchange rate and this purchasing power parity is that this will give you the real worth of dollar. Okay, market exchange rate, it only shows the demand. More the demand, more the rate of the dollar. Less the demand, less the rate of the dollar. See, more the demand of dollar appreciate, rupee depreciate. Rupee depreciate means you have to pay more. Similarly, less the demand of dollar means dollar depreciate, rupee appreciate. Rupee appreciate means you need to pay less rupee. Okay, so it all depends on demand and supply. Here demand supply will not be affected. What it will affect here is actually inflation. In India, if there is inflation, the prices can go high. Like now this year you are spending $1 lakh, and here it is 18 lakh rupee. But next year in US, if there is no inflation, in India there may be inflation. So let's say some inflation, let's say 5% inflation is there. So this value become around 19 lakh. Okay, so this become 19 lakh. Now what does this mean? $1 equal to rupee 19. Why this increase actually happened? It happened because of inflation. It is not because of demand of dollar. Demand of dollar is not actually affecting the purchasing power exchange rate. It only affects the market exchange rate. I hope this is clear for all of you. So purchasing power parity means if you compare it with rupee and dollar, how much you can get, what all items you can get by spending $1 in US to get exactly the same items in India, how much you need to pay. So $1 if you are spending there, you have to spend 18 rupee here. That is what, and this is how it is calculated. We'll take some basket of commodities. The samples will be taken. The most commonly used items is what you're going to take. You won't take each and every item. You can't go for average also. You'll do this. I hope this is clear for all of you. Now the next prelims question which can be asked is who calculate this? It is actually calculated by UN International Comparison Program. Okay, so it is actually measured by UN International Comparison Program. I hope you won't make any mistake here, because mostly PPP is actually used for comparison purpose. To know the real worth of dollar, to know the real production. If you calculate GDP, you will take PPP because it actually show you the real production. Okay, so I'll show you with example here. We'll take GDP of US and we'll take GDP of India, and I'll show you how is it actually going to work out. Okay, so UN International, UNICP. So just keep this also in your mind, who measures this, UN International Comparison Program. Now I'll briefly talk about market exchange rate also. I've already told you it completely depends on demand supply. So you'll have to draw a demand curve, you'll have to draw a supply curve, as we have seen in the case of demand supply chapter, and you have to find that equilibrium position where the demand meet the supply, and then you will get what is the price of $1 in terms of rupee. So in your y-axis you will have to write price of dollar in terms of rupee, and in the x-axis you will be writing the quantity of dollar which is demanded and supplied. Okay, so let me draw that. So here I'll be talking about on the x-axis quantity of dollar, on the y-axis price of dollar, and price of dollar we need it in terms of rupee, so in terms of rupee. Okay, now here we need to draw the demand supply curve. So we need to know who create demand, who create supply. We have done this discussion in fact before in our module. I don't remember exactly in which module we have done, but we have done this. But anyway, I'll be doing it again. So who create demand? Okay, see, demand shows outflow, because mostly who demand dollar? Because you need to make the payment in terms of dollar. Okay, so you are making payment in terms of rupee, means that will be in India. You are making payment in terms of dollar, that means the dollar is actually going out. So demand actually shows outflow of dollar. Now demand is more means outflow of dollar, that actually shows depreciation of rupee. If more outflow of dollar, so dollar is demanded, that shows appreciation of dollar and depreciation of rupee. I'll show it here in the graph. So who demands? Who demands means those who need to make the payments in terms of dollar. So who's that? It is the importers first. Okay, so importers, when they import, they need to make the payment in terms of dollar, so they demand dollar. They need dollar to import. If you need to make payment for something which you have bought from US, you have to pay in terms of dollar, so you demand dollar if you are an importer. So the first category of people who demand dollar is importers. And then secondly, Indian tourist. So Indian tourist visiting abroad means they can't go with rupee, so they will demand dollar. They will give the rupee whatever they have, they will take the dollar and they will go with dollar. That also shows outflow of dollar. So second category, Indian tourist. Okay, third, I would say Indian investor. So Indian investor, when he's investing abroad, he'll be taking up dollar and he'll be investing over there. Okay, so Indian investor, so he also demand dollar, so dollar outflows what you can see here. Then what about foreign investor? If foreign investor investing in India, that is actually a supply, because dollar is coming to India. When he come, he give the dollar and he get rupee and he will invest that in India. But if a foreign investor withdrawing, that is actually one of the important topic that we have discussed under FII already. So when they withdraw, even share market collapse and all those things will happen. Apart from that, when they withdraw, they get it in terms of rupee, they demand dollar because they have to take it back in terms of dollar. So that also shows outflow of dollar. So foreign investor, I am writing here withdrawal. When they withdraw, when they are investing, it is actually supply of dollar. It is actually good when they are investing. Okay, even that is also volatile, because that is actually a volatile investment. If it is FDI, it is good. If it is FII, anytime they can take that money. So flight of capital is one of the most important problem. Not getting into that, we have already done that. Okay, so these are the people who create demand. So what I need to say is demand, more the outflow of dollar, chance of rupee depreciation is more, or rather demand is more means rupee depreciate. Simple. Okay, now let's see the supply. Supply exactly will be the opposite. So if importers are demanding dollar, the exporters will supply dollar. They'll get the payment in terms of dollar. So exporters. So the first category, exporters. Then foreign tourist. Indian tourist is demanding dollar, so foreign tourist is actually supplying dollar when he come to India. So second, foreign tourist. Thirdly, foreign investor, as I've already told you, when he come to India, when he invest in India, he's actually coming with dollar and he's supplying dollar. But the problem is when he withdraw, that actually lead to flight of capital or outflow of dollar, and that create problems in the market, and that creates volatility in markets, especially in developing countries like in India. Okay, so foreign investor, when he invest. Okay, so foreign investor, and similarly foreign remittances and all those things will actually supply dollar. Okay, foreign remittances, all these will supply dollar. So we need to see the graph now. So demand curve will always be downward, so demand of dollar, and supply curve will be like this, supply of dollar. So this is your equilibrium position. This is the equilibrium position. So here, let's suppose rupee $1 is 67. Before it was 67. Now what is actually going to happen when this is more, when demand is more? When demand is more, as I've already discussed in the chapter of demand supply, demand curve shift rightward. There will be a rightward shift for demand curve. So the demand shift rightward. Now supply is not changing in the market, the supply of dollar remain the same. So what will happen? You can see the new equilibrium. There's a new equilibrium, that is, let's say rupee 74. So that's how rupee, you can see here, when the demand is increased, rupee depreciate. Okay, so this situation I would say rupee depreciate. Now on the other hand, if you see, if there is a supply of dollar is more and demand is less means either I can say supply more, Okay, more supply, or I would say demand is less. Demand less means I can go with this, then you don't want to consider that blue one. Then what will happen? This is the new equilibrium. So this will be like 65 rupee or something like that. So rupee appreciate. Okay, so demand is less means rupee appreciate. Demand is more means rupee depreciate. Demand for dollar more means dollar is demanded. So what is in need? Dollar is in need. So who is appreciating? Dollar is appreciating. Automatically rupee depreciate. Demand is less means no demand for dollar. So dollar depreciate. Automatically the rupee appreciate. So this is what you can understand. Now RBI can interfere. There are different cases where RBI can possibly interfere also. So let's suppose this is what we have discussed already, demand for dollar. Now if RBI can pump the same amount of supply, let's say 10% increase in dollar and 10% supply can be provided. Let's suppose like this, supply means supply curve shift rightward, right? So supply curve also shift rightward. That means RBI can interfere in the market, RBI can pump dollar. Then you see this is the new equilibrium point. So you will see there won't be any change in the price of dollar, right? Why? 10% increase in dollar, RBI interfere and RBI pump that much requirement of dollar, so there is no change in price. So this is how RBI can manage the exchange rate, and that's why we call our exchange rate as managed float. Even though floating, it is not complete floating, it is managed float. It is also known as dirty float because RBI or central bank can interfere in the forex market. So who decides this? It is actually interbank forex market. This demand supply curve and everything, only RBI authorized agencies can do all those things. Okay, so interbank forex market. Now what happens if import increase? If import, now why we are trying to decrease imports? If import increasing, in simple language, so importers demand dollar. So more the import means demand for what? Demand for dollar increase. So demand for dollar increase means you will see a rightward shift. You will see a rightward shift of the demand curve. Demand increased, rightward shift, automatically rupee depreciate. Okay, so rate of dollar increase, that means rupee depreciate. So this is what you can understand. So import increase automatically lead to, how this is the connection, increase in import. How is it connected to rupee depreciation? Because increase in import means demand for dollar increase. Demand for dollar increase means the price of dollar increase, automatically rupee depreciate. Rather import decrease, or rather if you're taking import decrease case, you can talk about export increase. So more export increase, what will happen? Supply of dollar increase. Supply of dollar increase means supply curve shift rightward. Okay, so as I have shown here, this is what actually going to happen. Supply curve shift rightward. I'll show you one more case if you want. Let's suppose this is supply and this is demand. So this is the first case. Now supply curve shift rightward means like this. Then what is the new equilibrium position? This is the new equilibrium position. So if it is before 67, now it is 65. So supply curve shift rightward. So what will happen? Supply shift rightward, the price of dollar coming down. So price of dollar decreased. So rupee appreciate. So which one is better? More export is better. In this way also, export high result into rupee appreciation, high import result into rupee depreciation. So this connections has to be kept in mind. Not only current account deficit and all those things we have, fiscal deficit, current account deficit, and all those things we have already done in different chapters. So here you in balance of payment chapter, here you have to keep this also in your mind. I hope this is clear for all of you. So how this exchange rate is changed in the as per market exchange rate? It changed based on demand supply. More the demand, more demand for dollar, rupee depreciate. Less demand for dollar, rupee appreciate. So everything depends on this demand and supply. And where is it actually happening? Interbank forex market. RBI can interfere, and that's why managed float, or we also call it as dirty float. Which one is better? Market exchange rate or purchasing power parity is better? Both are exchange rates. Which one is better? And as I have already discussed, $1 is actually equal to 74 in terms of market exchange rate, and when it comes to this purchasing power, it is 18. Why this huge difference is there? We've already discussed dollar is a hard currency. People demand dollar, so the demand of dollar will be very high as it is an international currency, and so it is always the demand will be high. The demand for dollar is always high, so the price of dollar in terms of rupee will be always high, so market exchange rate will always be high. But will it give you the real worth of dollar? It won't give you the real worth of dollar. It only shows the demand of dollar. More the demand, more price you need to pay. Okay, I hope you might be knowing about water diamond paradox. Water diamond paradox. What is more important? Water diamond paradox. What is more important? Water is more important. But which one is having more price? Diamond is having more price. Why? Water is easily available and diamond is not available. So it all depends on demand. More the demand, okay, and then more will be the price. Okay, if it is easily available or if supply is more, then the price will be less. So purchasing power parity, I want to tell you that it shows the real worth of dollar. Okay, so all transactions, market transactions are happened at this price 74. Nobody will give you anything at 18 rupee. You can't tell I need to purchase this item at purchasing power parity. You can't purchase anything. The transactions are at the market exchange rate, but the comparison, for example, if you see HDI, we have calculated HDI in that GNI per capita. I have told you need to take it at purchasing power parity. So GNI per capita, okay, GNI PCI at PPP only, and World Bank International Poverty Line. In the next module, I'll be talking about international poverty line, how is it measured and everything. It is nothing but average of some lowest or the poorest countries. Not all poorest countries, selected poorest countries is what we are going to take for international poverty line. We'll come to that anyway. Then World Bank International Poverty Line and IMF World Bank also. The comparison of GDP, they take it at purchasing power only. So all these are actually done at purchasing power. Okay, so I'll show you one example. We'll just compare the GDP of India and US. Okay, just for this calculation purpose, I'm taking the value of 2016. So GDP 2016 is what I'm taking now. US, it was dollar 18.6 trillion. Okay, India, rupee 150 lakh crore. Okay, now if we need to compare, we cannot compare now because one is in rupee, one is in dollar. So what we need to do, we need to convert this rupee in terms of dollar. Now, as I've already told you, we can convert in two ways. Either you can convert on the basis of market exchange rate, that is 67 or 74, or you can convert on the basis of purchasing power parity, that is 18. So any of this you can do. Let's do both. Okay, so firstly, what do you mean by this trillion? Trillion is 10 raised to 12. This lakh crore, accidentally it is also 10 raised to 12 itself. So 18.6 trillion and 150 trillion it is. Okay, so this is also trillion. Lakh crore is also trillion. So 150 trillion rupee. So what you can do, let me convert this 150 by 67. I'll be getting around 2.2 trillion. Okay, now here 150 by 18, I'll be getting 8.3 trillion. So you can see here, this is what I've got in terms of purchasing power. So if you compare GDP of India with US, it is half, right? GDP of India is, or US is double that of India, if you compare it on the basis of purchasing power parity exchange rate. But if you compare it on the basis of market exchange rate, it is around 8 times. Market exchange rate, it is 8 times. But which one shows the real production? Real production is this, right? Because this is the real worth of rupee. Here, why this 8 times is, it is manipulated because of demand and supply of dollar. Okay, more the demand for dollar, so market price, market exchange rate is actually varying because of demand of dollar. So that is why we cannot compare, we cannot make comparison on the basis of market exchange rate. For comparison, we use this. Now, I'll show you different datas in terms of market exchange rate, which economy is largest, and in terms of purchasing power also, which economy is largest. Again, in this year, you have to get the latest data. So the IMF data, 2016. So US, their GDP, I tell you, the same value I've told you already, 18.6 trillion. Second, China, $11.4 trillion. 3, Japan, $4.7 trillion. Then Germany, France, etc. will come. And finally 7, India, as we have just seen, 2.25 trillion. Okay, so what is the position of India as per market exchange rate? 7th position, market exchange rate. Now we'll see at purchasing power parity. Okay, so US, or first it is actually China 21.3 trillion. Then comes US, so 1, 2, 18.6 trillion. Third, India, we have just discussed, 8.7 trillion. 4, Japan, 4.9 trillion. So you can see here, what I want to tell you is India is the third largest when you see at purchasing power parity. I'll quickly tell the GDP of the world. GDP of world, $119 trillion. So India's share in world GDP, that is 7.3 percentage. Okay, so GDP of the world is 119 trillion. India's share is 7.3 percentage. So these are the values which are important. So ultimately they'll ask you what is purchasing power parity. What you need to know is, you spend $1 in US, what all items you get, the standard items. If you need to get exactly those same items in India, how much you need to pay? 18 rupee or 20 rupee. If there is inflation, that will change. Only inflation can change the purchasing power parity index or that exchange rate. But market exchange rate, it all depends on demand supply of dollar. So I hope this is clear. If you have any doubt, you can get in touch with me here, or you can join the Telegram channel for all my videos. Okay, so this Instagram ID or Facebook, you can get in touch with me. So see you guys.